Drawing on her experience as the parent of a transgender child, she works to help families navigate challenges and find and develop resources within Sullivan and Wayne counties, and has served on the board of the Delaware Youth Center in Callicoon for nearly 20 years. Her greatest priority is her family. She challenges this love into creating positive change for others facing similar experiences through all her various roles, and works to advocate and foster a more inclusive and supportive society for all families, especially those in the transgender community. So I give you Ann Santoro.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me here to speak. A little nervous. My name is Ann Santoro. My pronouns are she, her. I'm here to talk about, as Steve said, am I speaking loud enough?
No.
Oh dear.
Outside voice.
Okay, outside voice. Let me try that again. I'm Ann Santoro. My pronouns are she, her. I'm here to talk about a new organization, as you heard. And I've just pushed something on my laptop that just rolled through the whole presentation. Let's try that again.
You're going to the slide?
Oh, not up on the screen. Okay, good. A new organization called Transgender Plus Support Initiative. From the start, I want to be very clear. I'm not a medical or mental health professional. I am a mom. That's my qualification. My journey and my story today is through that lens as a parent who has walked alongside a transgender son. Am I loud enough?
Broadcast.
Oh yeah, I've got too many things on my laptop, so it keeps switching directions. Okay, before I share my personal experience, I'd like to take a moment to recognize a young man whose life was tragically cut short, a young transgender man. You may have seen this in the news, but it's important that we remember him and that we say his name. Sam Nordquist was subjected to prolonged physical and psychological abuse before his murder. His mother, Linda, told the local media that he was a kind person who was loved by his family. He would give you the shirt off his back. Very kind, loved his family, loved his nieces and nephew. He was very outgoing and worked hard. Please join me in a moment of silence to remember this young man, Sam Nordquist, who was taken too soon. Thank you. Before sharing my family's story, I want to provide some content through a few statistics. According to the Human Rights Campaign, sorry, I thought I could do this without my glasses. According to the Human Rights Campaign, 1.6 million people ages 13 and over in the United States identify as transgender. A 2022 NIH study found that 82% of transgender individuals have considered suicide and 40% have attempted suicide, with the highest rates among transgender youth. The Trevor Project reports that over a 5-year period, anti-trans laws led to an increase in past year suicide attempts among transgender and non-binary youth by as much as 72%. These aren't just numbers. These represent real lives, real people, real struggles, and real families like mine. I'm a mom. I have 3 wonderful children who are all kind, smart, talented, and make me incredibly proud. Might be a little biased. They're also a little competitive, so I have to acknowledge all 3 of them because they each think they're the favorite. So just putting that out there. They all value family, they love fiercely, and they truly make the world a better place. My youngest child is a bright, creative, hardworking, kind and thoughtful, with a quirky sense of humor, young man, and he is transgender. When my youngest was born 25 years ago, I had no idea the little girl I held in my arms was actually my son. And I had no idea the direction his life would take, or mine, for that matter. As a toddler and a young child, he was a loving, joyful bundle of energy. And he loved and was loved by everyone. I recall him greeting everyone we met in the grocery store.
We have the same child. Like, do we have the same child?
Well, I think we should talk. Maybe we should meet. I recall him greeting everyone we met in the grocery store, and I remember him reaching up for hugs from everyone, including strangers. Great job, Mom. In hindsight, there were clues throughout his childhood, but I easily shrugged them off. He was definitely a tomboy, in dress and in action. When he and his sister shared a room, the only way we could get them to agree on a wall color was to paint half the walls purple and half the walls blue. There was no other compromise. When he was just 2 years old, learning to use the potty meant a shopping trip to pick out his favorite underwear. So off we went to Walmart. He walked right past all the Disney princesses, all the pretty pinks and purples, and headed straight for the boys section for the Bob the Builder boys briefs. Tried to redirect him back to the girls section, but he was determined. Ultimately, I decided this wasn't a battle worth fighting. So he got the Bob the Builder briefs. He was so proud of his new briefs, and he loved the pocket in the front. My mother-in-law tells a story about clothes shopping with him. She picked out a cute pair of jeans with a flower on the pocket. He looked at her and he said, "Grandma, you just don't get it." None of us got it at the time. It was just who he was. Preparing for today, I had a long conversation with my son. I wanted to make sure he was comfortable with my speaking about our experience and sharing stories about his life. He shared a childhood memory I hadn't heard before from when he was about 4. He and a friend were going to play cowboys and Indians. His friend grabbed a cowboy costume from the dress-up box and indicated my child should pick out and dress as a cowgirl. My child was shocked. Of course not. That wasn't right. This wasn't something he was taught. This was something he just knew on a gut level. He knew who he was. As the rest of us needed to catch up a little. I've heard people compare knowing you're transgender to knowing you're right or left-handed. It's not a choice. It just is. It's just who you are. Yes. I remember once when a coworker told me about a TV segment she watched featuring a family with a transgender child. This was quite a few years ago. The family had moved to a new town to allow their child to begin life as their authentic gender without harassment. I didn't know that I had even heard the word transgender before this. And I remember thinking, thank goodness that's something I'll never have to deal with. And those are decisions that I'll never have to make. Little did I know. Looking back, I wonder if it wasn't a message for me to open my eyes and learn more. If it was, I didn't listen at the time. When my son was about 15, my daughter came to me and said, "Just a heads up, Mom, your youngest is going to be coming to talk to you to tell you he's transgender." I was honestly shocked and concerned, and I wasn't sure what to do or what would come next. All I could think about was that story that my coworker had told me years before, and I didn't want to uproot my family, and I didn't want to have to start somewhere else. Of course, my husband, who worries much less than I, is my balance, simply responded, "You're surprised?" When I told him, I was surprised, I was concerned, and I was unsure where to turn or what to do next. My husband and I talked, we spoke with our youngest, and decided that counseling is probably the best place to start. My biggest question was, who do we trust? This was too important to mess up. So I turned to a friend who was also a mental health counselor. He agreed to meet with my child and with my husband and I. His advice and his guidance were invaluable. Fortunately for us, our family was supportive and surrounded us with love. I know not a lot of families are that fortunate, unfortunately. And that support made a world of difference at a time when so much seemed so uncertain. I had the privilege of witnessing my son tell his best friend that he was transgender and had a new name. We were driving in the car. They were sitting in the back seat, and I was driving. I tried not to eavesdrop too obviously. I listened to my son explain and then waited for his response with bated breath. There was silence. No response. My heart sank. There are some people who really matter, whose reactions carry extra weight. Rejection in that moment would have been devastating for my son. I held my breath. I tried to think, what could I say or do to try to help the situation? After a pause, I heard my son say, "What are you doing?" His friend responded, "I'm just updating your name in my contacts." I sighed with relief, because of course, it could be that simple. This was his friend, who had always been his friend, his friend. My son had a new name and gender, so step one was to update the information in her phone. I'm pretty sure they had deeper conversations later, but it was such a relief to know that he had friends who would stand by him. Our counselor friend helped us navigate my son's return to school as a boy, connecting us with the guidance counselor, which led to meetings with school administration. The school personnel were respectful and allowed my son to advise what he needed to comfortably return to school, addressing questions about bathrooms, about sports, and locker rooms. Can you imagine returning to school in your junior year of high school with a new name and a new gender? That's a tough time. For my son, I think it was a relief to finally be his authentic self. I also think he's incredibly brave. There were bumps in the road. It wasn't all smooth sailing. As much as we tried to anticipate challenges in advance, there were situations to navigate, but it was still the best choice for him. During the summer before my son returned to school, we told some friends about his change, but when he returned in the fall, most people didn't know. Most of my friends didn't know. Our family obviously knew, and we all held our breath through the first day of school. We weren't sure what to expect. We feared all the untold possibilities. And I am the worrier, so I could imagine all kinds of scary things. His older siblings were away, but they stayed in touch with us all through the day, constantly checking in. Have you heard anything? Have you heard from him yet? We didn't hear a thing. And he came home back to himself. He was just fine. The rest of us, I think, suffered more than he did that day. Finding appropriate medical care was another challenge. We made an appointment with our family practitioner, who was very supportive, but very frank in saying she didn't know how to treat a trans teen and didn't know who to refer us to. We were on our own. I can remember calling medical offices before appointments to explain or to remind them that although his name and gender had to stay his given name and gender on insurance paperwork, it was imperative that they use his proper name and his proper pronouns. We had varying degrees of success, but the importance cannot be overstated. It was devastating to him to be called by his dead name. He knew who he was. With family help, we eventually found a medical provider over 2 hours away. The practice also had a trans advocate who provided invaluable advice on next steps, legal document changes, and more. The difference was night and day. The intake forms included his preferred name and pronouns, and the providers and staff treated him with dignity and respect. It was a joy to watch my son finally receive the care he needed and to see him in an environment where he was safe and acknowledged as his true self. Gender-affirming care is life-changing. It's life-saving in many instances. I can tell you the care that my child received was truly transformative. Looking back, in hindsight, I realize how he had physically withdrawn into himself. His posture changed, his head was down, as if he was trying to disappear. That bubbly, joyful child was gone. As he became more confident in his authentic self, we literally watched him blossom and come back to life. The light returned to his eyes, the twinkle to his smile. Was when I understood just how incredibly important this transition was and how incredibly right it was. Speaking to your child every day, using a certain name, and then switching to a new one takes a little practice. As a mom of 3, sometimes find myself running through all the names and the pet names, try to talk to the child. Thank you. Thank you. It's my rock. Trying to run through all the names until you get the right one. Pronouns sometimes take even more practice. And it matters. When someone you love and respect with every ounce of your being asks you to correct the name and pronouns that you've been using, you figure it out. What do we do when a friend gets married? We start using their new name. And it's a celebration. Why can't we view this as a celebration also? Someone becoming who they truly are and who they've truly been inside. Does this turn up the volume thing show on the screen? Oh, God. Last year, my counselor friend reached out about a conference he had attended in Pennsylvania, hosted by Guy Singer, regarding transgender care. It was an exceptional gathering of professionals from across the region who came to learn and share best practices. During the conference, they displayed a map showing the dots on the wall. Dots representing places that provided care and support for transgender individuals. Pennsylvania had a lot of dots, except for Wayne County. There was nothing there, a complete void of services. My friend called me up afterwards and said simply, "I want to be a dot." That resonated with me. We discussed my family's experience and the significant distances we traveled for essential support, for medical care, for legal advice, guidance. Everything was well over an hour or 2 away. From my experience, Sullivan County faced the same critical gap in resources. That conversation became the catalyst for TSI. Our organization is composed of people from all walks of life, committed to addressing the need in Sullivan and Wayne counties for gender-affirming safe spaces and support services for Trans Plus community members, families, and friends. Our mission is to fulfill this commitment through 3 key pillars: services, just direct support for transgender individuals and their families; education, informing the community and professionals about transgender issues; and advocacy, working for policies that protect transgender rights. Although our group is fairly new, we're working diligently to spread awareness and support the transgender and non-binary community. We have regular peer support meetings for trans individuals. We have family support meetings for parents, siblings, and other loved ones. We're developing comprehensive resource lists of trans family businesses, providers, and professionals. We're creating educational materials and workshops for medical providers on providing dignified care to transgender patients. And we're building partnerships with local organizations to expand our reach. Right, before I wrap up, I want to just emphasize how important all of these things are. one of the things I felt was incredibly alone and isolated. And again, I'm not a professional, and, we're talking about a lot of this is just human contact, just the ability to speak to someone else who's been through a similar experience. It's important and it matters. As I close today, I want to emphasize that supporting transgender individuals isn't just about acceptance. It's about affirming their right to exist authentically. The statistics I shared earlier demonstrate the life or death importance of this support. Whether you're a parent, an educator, a healthcare provider, or a community member, I invite you to learn more about TSI and how you can contribute to creating safe, affirming spaces for transgender individuals in our community. Thank you. Thank you for listening. I want to just put, of course now I can't click here, our contact information up here. And thank you for listening to my story and for your commitment to building a more inclusive world. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. So, anyone has any questions?
Girl, I've done it. I don't have any questions. She's looking at me like.
And I love to hear that, honestly, because it is a journey. And at the time, I felt like I was the only one who had that journey. So knowing that someone else has walked that same path means a lot. Yes.
So I wear a lot of hats in the community, being president of this congregation and a fabulous cook. I'll attest to that. It's my therapy. Anyway, I'm the publisher of the Reporter as well. So I'm just interested in what you think the possibilities are for really, getting the word out, educating folks, connecting people's stories, especially at this time when nationally we're shutting down the humanity of a whole lot of folks.
And that's a really good question, and that's a struggle, honestly. In our meetings, I'm always the mom that's saying, we have to be careful, we have to protect our trans members, and I firmly believe that. I think unfortunately there is a hostility
Yes.
that's directed towards these vulnerable, beautiful people. That's scary, to say the least. But I've also found, and I don't have an exact answer, but what I have found as we're beginning to do this work and we're beginning to reach out to other people, is there are a lot more people who care and who are concerned than I realized. And I keep meeting more like-minded people like today. And I feel that hope is important and hope is contagious. And yes, it's a scary world and we have to be careful, but we have to hold on to hope and to love, because that's how we survive this. And that's how we get to the other side.
We were really fortunate, my family. I feel like my boyfriend's family is here and they accepted it immediately. His children immediately accepted it. I worked with her, so like my work immediately accepted it. We didn't run into a lot of opposition. The only thing is I live in Wayne County, which is very red. And until he could pass, I was terrified because I wasn't afraid of him doing something. I was afraid of somebody doing something to him.
Yes.
So, and also he is legally a male now. He has a male birth certificate.
Yes.
He
Our
has
son
done
does as well.
all of the things, which was also terrifying.
Yes.
And yeah, he's married now. His wife is pregnant. You would never know. And he
Right.
lives as, he has a private Instagram account that shows his journey, and so many people have it. But as far as the world knows, I have a son, and that's all it's ever been.
Yes.
But my daughter is they them, which is way more difficult to navigate and
Yes.
super good time. And I can say that because I'm the mom. So, you know, I'm not making fun of it, but it's just so much harder to understand and to explain to people. And I just don't feel like I have to. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it is what it is.
Yes, I agree. And I love that. Our family jokes and kids also, you know, I mean, I think you have to have laughter.
Well,
I
the
think
name
that's
thing,
part of
like you
fun.
said, changing the contact in the phone, he went from the feminine version to Nicholas.
Yes.
And I'm like, listen, kid, you've been nicking my phone. That's what you're gonna be until I figure it out, until I get used to it. And then like a couple months later, I forget what he did. He did something, and I was like, Nicholas. He was like, oh, I see we got over the name. Like, yeah, we did. Now take out the damn trash. No, you know.
Yeah,
But it's yeah.
and we're all still family and we all, you know, we all move forward together. Thank you. Anybody else?
Thank you very much for coming today. Beautiful
Yeah.
presentation. I know,
Thank you.
I'm sure that you were nervous and you did a beautiful job.
Thank you.
Very authentic. Thank you.
If you want.
Much.
Can we share the screen?
Oh, sorry,
I'm sorry.
that would be me.
We should check to see if there's anybody had questions online.
Yeah.
Sharon, did you just raise your hand? You're on mute.
I'm sure you're.
Can I unmute?
Just take the slide off.
She has to turn,
And Sharon needs to unmute.
they have to turn their
She's waving like, hello, I'm here.
microphone.
There it is.
Sharon,
Did I do it?
unmute. Can't hear you.
Wait a minute.
You spoke before, so she's gotta be able to unmute.
Lucy says hit the three little dots. If you go over the icon. Technology.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, finally. I was just wondering because, uh, I've been around the world, for a long time. I've been here a long time and I've also seen all the changes, that we suddenly see and learn to think are normal, or at least some people do. But I was wondering, because when I was in Madison, Wisconsin, it's a very progressive town. I went to the women's department and all of the sales people were trans women helping. And I thought like, well, that's great because it makes people feel great. They were wonderful at their job. But I'm just wondering, is that the only kind of job they may have been offered? I'm wondering how difficult employment is for people who have trans.
That is a good question, and I can only speak from my experience. I mean, my son presents as male and looks that way. So I think, I mean, he's, you know, he's able to, I don't think he's ever not gotten a job because of who he is. I don't think anyone realizes, but I would imagine there are challenges and
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Mine was working at his position and
Transitioned,
yes, thank you. The word
Yes.
was escaping me
Yep.
while he was working there.
he did,
And
and they were supportive.
they were supportive. They actually changed their healthcare
Wow,
package so that he could,
that's amazing.
I'll even say it, it was Woodlock. I'm shocked, but it was Woodlock.
Yeah,
Resource list.
And they were-
honestly,
they
yes,
were-
they should go on our.
I mean, there were some people there that were jerks, but I mean, most everybody was pretty good about it. And, you know, he
Yeah.
became a male lifeguard and it was a little challenging for a little while, but now it's like your son, he presents as male and he has a job
Yeah,
he teaches swimming lessons. It's, Goldfish National Swim School
okay,
and he has his own school, so.
wow.
Yeah, but I mean, they were, he went to college, left on spring break as one and went back. Actually, that night, I said, I'm pretty sure my son just left. And he was laughing because he had like the hat backwards and and as soon as he got back to school, he called me at 1 a.m. He answered the phone and he's like, Nick wants to talk to you. And I'm like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. And he's like, I just need to talk to you. And I'm like, okay. And he, you know, obviously, I guess it was hard for him, but I'm just like, you know, it's 1 a.m. Are you okay? Like, spit it out.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, so he like went to school as, like your son went to school as one, came
Yeah.
back as another, was working at a job as one, came back as another, and nobody really
Yeah.
seemed to, it was a pretty easy
Yeah.
process.
And what I have found is that people who know my son and knew my son, they know him as a person, so it's, okay, we need to make this change with you. Okay, we'll figure it out, including some people who, based on what I see on social media, I would say would not be that way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But so it's almost like they've separated, like, well, this person's my friend, so
Right.
this is
I love
okay.
that too. It's like, oh, it's okay for your kid, but everybody
Yes,
else.
but
I
sometimes,
know
yeah,
people like that, and I'm just like, oh, okay.
yeah, that's not how it is, but
But I also have people that forgot that I had two girls. Like, they've been around for so long, but they have forgot that I had two girls, and I now have a girl.
yeah.
And I'm just like, interesting.
Yes, yeah, because now they
It's
know
been
him.
so long.
Yeah. Exactly. So I don't think I answered that question very well.
Just curious, yeah.
Yeah, I do imagine that there are challenges. And unfortunately, I think a lot of it may have to do with how completely you're transitioned, which is
Yeah.
not the right answer, but I think that's where prejudices lie.
Or the mindset of whoever's trying to hire you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I can say from an employer's perspective that it should not matter.
Well, a lot of things
Yeah.
shouldn't
Yeah.
matter, but
And it doesn't matter
Yes.
as long as the job is getting done and things are happening and,
Yeah. Yeah.
it
I've
doesn't
heard it
matter.
called abstraction.
Well, then they
Yeah.
don't have a very good sense of purpose if
Right.
they get distracted
Right.
by everything.
Right.
They shouldn't be loyal.
How do you feel about this whole controversy with sports? That's really what's in the news and the media mostly.
Yeah, so, I obviously have pretty strong feelings. But I think one of the things that people should look at, I thought about that question, wondered if it would come up. I remember going through school budget votes, when the budgets were voted down. And when that happens, they say, okay, we're going to eliminate sports, we're going to eliminate music and art and all of these things. And I remember the arguments about how important sports were, how important they were for your mental health and for your physical health and for team building and for social growth. All of those reasons still apply. So my argument is, if there's an argument that the playing field isn't level or isn't as level as it should be, then let's figure out how to make it that way. And not by banning people from sports, because sports are important. And there's no reason. The Olympics had transgender people playing in the Olympics. They had a system, they had it figured out. And now suddenly it just can't happen. So yes, I feel very strongly. I think there's work to be done, and I hope we can get it done. Yes.
How did they figure it out in the Olympics?
I don't know. I think there were hormonal, testing for hormone levels, and you had to be under a certain amount, and you had to be so many years into transition. That there were benchmarks that had to be met, and if you met them, then off we go. I mean, if you look at the Olympics, somebody had given me this argument. If you look at Katie Ledecky, I mean, she could outswim everybody. This is someone who's physically built and able to, but she's a woman, and that's okay. So, there should be a way. There needs to be a desire to figure it out. And right now, what we have is just a desire to make an example and to try to hurt people. And
Much
so,
outrage, right?
yeah.
Like, how could you let this happen?
Yes, yeah. We're protecting women's sports. No, you're hurting people intentionally.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Next question.
But next question. Yes.
My sense is that there's a very big difference between becoming a trans male and a trans female.
100%.
And there are really specific challenges that they face. Murder, basically, and worse. Like, so I struggle with, like, are these two separate issues? Yes, they're both transitioning, and I get the gender dysphoria, but there's so many problems that are unique to trans women. That I wonder if that requires almost a separate approach. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but it's.
I don't disagree, and
It is
I
harder.
I don't know what the solution is. I do think it's harder. And I think also, I think at the point in your life that you transition matters too. You know, if you take puberty blockers and, you know, have gender affirming care, you know, early on, then you don't, I mean, you know, men have certain people assigned male at birth have certain physical characteristics, a deep voice and, you know, just certain physical characteristics. And I think that's where I think that's where the extra prejudice happens. You know, it's like obvious that they've changed. And so there's this I don't know, this looking down on them or something. As if
Stigma,
they're,
I almost feel like
I'm sorry.
a stigma almost.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what I mean? All of us have our weaknesses. All of us have things that, you know, that we would like to be different. I hate that that these stigmas are attacked that way. And I don't know what the fix is.
Well,
But-
it was worse for gay men than it was for lesbian women as well.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Speak up. Oh, because men can fetishize gay women.
I'm sorry?
Right.
Because straight men can fetishize gay women.
Right.
So they don't have a reason to attack them.
And women are oppressed in society.
Yeah. Yeah.
Besides.
I have one more question.
Yes.
Is there any educational component in the schools to help young people I mean, forget the old people, because we know what 50 or more % of our population already thinks, with the young people and trying to educate them as to, I mean, I know there'll be a fear because crazy parents will say, well, this will make their kid that way, but you know, I've gone through that before. So, but it would be very helpful if starting now, we can begin to make some, you know, some improvements in the way people are thinking about this, because it's a large part of our population, or at least really a very tiny part of the population that they're focusing on. But enough people that would be helped if young people began to get educated and know how to, you know, I mean, I just remember when they first brought the first Black child into my school because it was integrated.
Please keep talking.
I just want to bring up I think that it's not a realistic expectation that that's going to happen in the schools these days. They're under too much pressure. So I think
I know,
the
but-
fact that you know, they've created this group, you know, essentially a community group, probably has far more power, far more reach. You know?
Well, we're very small so
Right.
far.
But
We're-
potentially.
We're hoping, yes. we're
Yeah.
hoping.
But that's why we're trying to get in school boards that are democratic and could conceivably bring in something that would be useful instead of all the other craziness. So this is why we're working so hard, you know, on the streets to get people into those offices. I just think, I was saying, I remember that they came to our classrooms and told us how to behave when the first Black child came into the class. Well, it was helpful. They told us from their perspective, but the kids didn't know. We were young, you know, and I'm just wondering, you know, it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt me because it opened my eyes to a whole other thing that we had never experienced before. So I'm just wondering, you know, about if those are some of the things you're thinking about to help the situation along.
We're yes and no. I mean, as far as education in the schools, I don't know that there's a lot that we can do yet. I mean, I think talking about it with more people is a start.
Mhm.
We did have couple things I want to say on this. We did have an educational session, and we invited all of the guidance counselors from the school, and they attended.
Oh,
And I was very encouraged by that, but I kind of feel like that didn't go beyond guidance,
mhm.
the guidance department. So there is more to do. I feel like there was progress being made, and this backlash,
Yes.
you know, with the book burning and the anti-DEI and all of that. I think I mean, progress is never in a straight line. So I think progress was being made, and now there's some pushback, and I think we'll begin to get some pushback against that. I can tell you from our experience, the kids were not the problem.
Yeah, no.
You know, the kids were fine. We had, I mean, again, my son, having told just a couple friends, walked into school on the first day of school as a boy with a new name. And what he had said was he wanted his teachers to be told his new name. The rest of the teachers would figure it out. I mean, he really set parameters on what he wanted. And what we found was all of the kids were kind of like my husband. You're surprised, you know? No big deal. This is still our friend. This is still okay. I remember there was over Thanksgiving, my son came home and he was upset because someone had said something to him, and he felt it was a dig, you know, and it bothered him, and he wasn't really happy with how he responded, and it was kind of hanging over him. And the next day, with nothing that he did, but the next day he got a text from this friend. And the friend said, I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. I said something yesterday. I didn't think about it, but someone pointed out to me that could have been hurtful to you. And I want you to know I didn't mean it that way.
Nice.
No adults were involved, you know? So I honestly, I think our children are our hope. I think they get it. They're, you know, they understand these are just people. These are their friends. It's okay. And I'm sure it's not true of everyone. And I'm sure parental influence is a factor as well. But there we are.
Mhm. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
I have to say, I was terrified. This is a lovely group.
You weren't nervous at all.
We couldn't tell one bit.
Great mom.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.
Now, I had, forgotten to take the offering with, I was so nervous, I forgot to take the offering at the beginning of our service. So, Lori, give us another song. We can help, Devin might help pay the rent to rent this facility.
So my second song is actually from the Unitarian Universalist hymnal, and it's called "Voice Still and Small." And it's pretty simple. There's only 8 lines. Again, now you're all so experienced that you can just relax. And you know, we can take with us this hopeful message, right? This story, this mom testifying in a way to the importance of our values and our inclusivity. And this song actually is, in one sense, can bolster us and carry us through until we're together again. I'll sing it through once, and then we'll break it down. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear your call, singing in dark and rain, sorrow and pain. Still we remain singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears all through the years, singing, said, voice still and small, voice still and small, again, voice still and small, voice still and small, one more time, voice still and small, singing, singing. We'll do that one more time. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear your call. Singing, that's our next part. Voice still and small. Voice still and small, I hear your call. Deep inside all, woo, I hear your call. I hear your call. Singing. Let's do that one again. Voice still and small. Voice still and small. Where? Deep inside. Deep inside all, I hear your call. I hear your call. Singing in dark and rain. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain. Sorrow and pain, still we remain. Still we remain. Singing. Let's start from the beginning. Voice still and small. Voice still and small. Inside all, I hear you call. Singing, singing. Singing.
I want to thank you all for coming, and after we finish the service, we do have some coffee and some refreshments available. And we also like to thank everybody who has been with us online. Thank you all. Sharon, Heidi, Georgette, Art, everyone. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. We have refreshments available. Thank you.